This is the real story of a man with a beautiful mind. In 1954, Princeton University was abuzz with excitement. A young professor had just solved one of the most important and difficult problems in mathematics. The problem had been posed by the famous mathematician André Weil over a decade earlier, and at first no one could solve it. But this new professor took the problem on, and after some months in isolation, he finally cracked it. His name was John Nash. He was only 22 years old. It was June, and John's paper was going to be presented at a conference in Paris. This was the kind of event where brilliant minds gathered from all around the world, and because of his exceptional work, Nash had been invited to present alongside the most distinguished scholars of mathematics. After 2 weeks of preparation, Nash was ready. He was excited to speak about his work, but there was one thing that bothered him. You see, he didn't know anyone in the field of mathematics who dressed like him. Nash had a strong sense of style. He liked to wear suits and ties. In fact, when he came to America to study at Princeton, he had bought 2 elegant suits, but now he wasn't so sure if this was the right choice. Looking at the attendees of the conference, it seemed that for mathematicians, dressing up was not a priority. But he was already here, and so John Nash decided to go ahead and wear his finest suit for the conference. He met several people who would become prominent names in mathematics, like Paul Cohen and William Thurston. They were friendly and welcoming. When it was time for the presentation, Nash went up on stage. He knew his work well and spoke with great confidence. Most of the audience were experts in mathematics, but Nash didn't care. He was so enthusiastic about his work that he talked about it the way one might explain a hobby. For example, chess. This probably helped Nash connect with the audience. They appreciated his enthusiasm and his knowledge. After his presentation, he received thunderous applause. John Nash had arrived. It seemed that everything was going perfectly for him. He had successfully defended his thesis and became a doctor. Now he had made an important contribution to mathematics. All he needed was to be recognized for it. But something strange happened. The other professors didn't care about his work. Some didn't even acknowledge its existence. His closest colleague, Paul Cohen, said that he found Nash's behavior a bit odd. For example, he would hold meetings for his own amusement and then storm out before anyone else could talk. This is because Nash didn't like discussing ideas with others. He wanted to work alone. When he started applying for positions at universities, he found that the other professors weren't interested in hiring him. At that point, Nash was quite desperate. He was 26 years old and still couldn't find a job. Meanwhile, his wife, Alicia, had to support them both while she finished her degree. To make matters worse, he was starting to experience psychotic episodes. During these episodes, he believed that he was part of a conspiracy or that he was doing secret government work as a spy. Nash called all kinds of people claiming to be a representative of the President of the United States. He would claim that he was recruited to be a spy when he was still a student at Princeton. Someone must have noticed his behavior because eventually he was sent back home from Europe. However, he was so far gone that even his mother couldn't recognize him. She said, "I did not know what had happened to John." His eyes were blank. He looked through me as though I were not there. Nash had completely lost touch with reality. He experienced more breakdowns in the following years. He was unable to do any work and hardly ever left his apartment. His wife, Alicia, did everything she could to help him. Even when she got pregnant, she still cared for him without hesitation. Their son was born, but sadly he died after only a few months. Nash never learned about this. Alicia hid it from him because she didn't want him to have another breakdown. At this point, she had to make a difficult decision. Should she take care of her husband, who wasn't getting better, or should she leave him? She chose to stay with him, and thankfully, she was able to receive financial support from her parents. Although she always claimed that it was love at first sight, There was more to her relationship with Nash than that. She needed someone to take care of her, and Nash fit the bill. Years went by, and Nash slowly improved. He started leaving his house again, and returned to work at MIT. Alicia followed him wherever he went because she was afraid that he would have a breakdown again. But Nash was indeed much better. He published many papers in mathematics and became friends with some of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century. He worked closely with the mathematician Paul Cohen again, but as their friendship deepened, Cohen noticed that Nash was acting strangely again. He asked Nash if he was having problems, and he lied and said, "No, I don't think so." Sadly, Nash began to struggle again. His colleagues tried to help him, but they couldn't get through to him. One day, Paul Cohen noticed that Nash had written down a lot of bizarre numbers on the board. They were correct. This was really strange because Nash had written them down in a completely incomprehensible way. Cohen said, "John, can you explain what you are doing?" Nash responded, "I'm sorry, you will not believe me anyway." Cohen didn't understand what Nash was writing until 10 years later, when he discovered that Nash was writing down the numbers of a famous unsolved problem in mathematics. No one had been able to solve this problem yet, so why did Nash write down the answer? There are two possible explanations for this. The first is that Nash was in another psychotic episode. The second explanation is that Nash had solved the problem, but he was so far gone that he couldn't connect with his colleagues anymore. Paul Cohen didn't know what to do. He couldn't force Nash to speak, so he decided to send him to a psychiatrist. Nash didn't agree, but Cohen convinced him to do it. Nash saw the psychiatrist privately for 2 years. Slowly, Nash began to open up. It took a while, but eventually he began speaking again. One day, Cohen visited Nash at the hospital and asked him why he didn't want to talk to anyone. Nash answered, "You don't want to talk to me because you don't want to hear my ideas. You don't want to hear them because you think they are crazy." Nash was wrong. His colleagues wanted to hear his ideas because they knew how brilliant he was. However, Nash couldn't realize this. He continued, "I am not crazy. I used to be an authority in the field of mathematics. I was one of the best. Then I went insane. I spent years in a mental institution. But I'm not crazy. I'm here to tell you that, what a sad state of affairs." Nash thought he was still the best mathematician in the world, when in reality he was barely able to speak. He continued, "If you will let me go back to my research, I will show you that I am not crazy." Paul Cohen understood that Nash didn't mean any harm. He merely wanted to do his work. So Cohen promised Nash that he would rehire him if he proved that he had recovered. Nash went back to his work and managed to publish some good papers. Paul Cohen kept his promise and hired Nash back to MIT. But Nash had changed. He was much humbler than before. Nash once said, "I was so absorbed in my work, I would forget to eat or drink or sleep. I could solve problems no one else could. But I didn't care about anything else. I looked down on people. I thought I was better than them. And then I went insane and I learned that I'm not better than anyone." Nash won a Nobel Prize in economics and became one of the most famous professors at MIT. Even though he struggled with schizophrenia for most of his life, he never gave up. He didn't allow his illness to defeat him, and in the end, he was able to work again and teach students. Nash passed away in 2015. His wife, Alicia, outlived him. In the end, the two were inseparable, just like they had been in their youth. If you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.